So in today's video, I want to discuss consciousness, making decisions, and how can you even make sense of if your decisions is the best, or do you have blind spots where it makes your decision skewed and you're actually not making the best decision for your business, for your life, your relationship. So if you're new to this channel, my name is Elijah and I talk anything anywhere between business, mindset, and my personal experience on growing my own business or management firm and just documenting the journey ultimately, right? So recently I've been fascinated with this book called Phantoms in the Brain, which is written by V.S. Ramachandran, MD, PhD, and Sandra Blakesley. That one was easier. If you're interested to learn about how can you make better decisions in sales calls, make better decisions on running ads, or make better decisions on building a relationship, building a team, ultimately you need to be able to understand brain and yourself, all right? Because when you're able to understand yourself, then you can also understand on how you can position yourself and communicate it properly to the people around you, right? And that's one of the most important skill set that you can develop as an entrepreneur, business owner, when it comes with, number one, being able to be personable, right? And being able to understand other people. So you can actually empower them and enable them to reach their best potential. But before we actually dive more into this entire study I've been having, I want to give a fair warning. This is my personal experience and my personal research, so do your own due diligence, right? This is only my experiences. I don't have any certificate, I don't have any college degree, I'm a college dropout, and I've only built everything from scratch and learning from books and just personal experience and speaking with tons of experienced individuals in the business space, right? And in health, everything, right? So let's get that out of the way, right? And so this is a very interesting topic because it's called phantoms, right? Phantoms in your brain. And I want you guys to ingrain this in your mind right now. I don't have any fancy infographic or drawing board right now, so let's just do this brain exercise right now. Imagine there's two different circles right now, and in between there's like a cross, like a gray area, right? And then on the left side is fundamental truths or first principle truths, right? These are the things that is true. Meaning, number one, what are fundamental truths? God is real and God is alive, right? Number two, right? There is air that you're breathing in right now. You just cannot simply see it. Now, what are objective truths? Very interesting, right? This is the right side now. Objective truths are practically, for example, let's just say in the consulting space or the info space, right? Well, a program is a scam until proven not. Meaning you're not going to think, it's not gonna be a scam until you've actually gone through the entire process and actually have consumed the information and implement it to your life, right? It's subjective because number one, it might have worked with hundreds of other people, but it might not work for you, right? That's subjective truth. Or you could say LeBron James is the greatest player of all time compared to Michael Jordan. Subjective truth, right? So those are the things that is based on our personal experience, your past traumas, your past observations, right? But these are the fundamental truths that you cannot replace. On the left side, right, are the things that what it is. For example, what's a fundamental truth as well? We are all born in your mother's womb. That's a fundamental truth, right? So now you guys have a good baseline of like a fundamental truth and also objective reality or objective truths. There's a gray area where practically, let's just say that it's your consciousness making a decision from your feelings, your observations, right? I wanted to make this baseline so you guys have a better understanding before we actually dive deeper into this. So now, let me break it down to you guys what a phantom brain is. So practically, it's a study of all of these patients across the board. Like let's say you get in a car crash and you get incarcerated, right? And one of your limbs get cut off, but for some reason, your consciousness is still feeding within you that you can still feel a pain in your right arm even though it's cut off. And that is still there, right? But the thing though is the brain works, right? And I've been studying about brain is so fascinating is, it's transmuting and transferring information that it's still there, right? And one of the studies of phantom brains is consciousness and the realities, right? So, and again, I'm gonna get a bit deeper here, but stay with me. But pretty much these phantom brains or phantom limbs is a insight or a knowledge that allows you to understand how your brain is mapped out and how this is going to connect to making better decisions. So now let's talk about the objective truths that your brain creates. For example, let's say we experience the same exact thing and a couple months later, actually let's make this more defined. Let's say we both ate a hot dog with ketchup and mustard within it, right? And we both said, this is extremely good. Then a couple of years later, we revisited that memory, right? And for some reason, maybe you have a trauma with hot dogs and this recalls back a specific memory in your brain from family issues or a physical hurt or whatever it is. Then eventually fast forward, right, we discuss, hey, do you remember that hot dog that we ate? It was really good, right? Do you remember what it was, the condiments inside it? And I said, I believe there was ketchup and mustard within it, right? And you mentioned, actually, no, it was only mustard, right? Even though that we both have the same exact memory, the way your brain is gonna work is it's going to feed you a specific memory and it will delete anything that is extremely traumatic, and usually that happens from case to case. Have you spoken to your mom talking about have you turned off the light and you told your mom, yes, I've turned it off, but you actually didn't, and your mom went into the restroom and turned off the light and then went to your bedroom and started spanking your ass. So essentially that's a trauma to itself, right? It's an event that happens, but it's a developed trauma that you've built up, you thinking that you turn it off, but actually it hasn't been turned off yet. Now, how does this actually make sense, or how can you make this information useful on making better decisions? So now let's talk about businesses. You have to understand the foundation or the fundamentals that you've acquired your business practices or methodologies or your ideas. Where did you get them? And in terms of that foundation, what is the basis of tactics or framework that they have given you, right? So for example, maybe I have a specific system that I use that keeps working, but for you, you try to apply it, but it doesn't work. Well, there's a lot of unspoken rules on why that specific system works. For example, maybe the way you grew up, your relationship, your framework on how you solve specific problems, right? These things play a part when you're actually implementing a system. So you have to go an extra deeper layer when you're implementing or copying a specific system, framework, or a sales script, whatever it is, right? You have to understand into its core essence and break it down to first principles when you're making a decision and adapting a new principle within yourself when you're applying it to your own ventures. The consciousness is a window of understanding our self-image and how we perceive our external world. Because if you think about it in the Bible, it talks about we are created in the image of God, right? So this consciousness that we have, this is actually a window of like even exploring that ethereal concept of how does God exist within us, and how can you communicate within the Holy Spirit? Again, I'm not gonna go deeper into that, but it's extremely interesting study that I've been looking into, and I highly recommend you to look into it as well. But what's interesting about it is there are things that are unavoidable. For example, the way you grew up will have an extreme impact if you will actually become a good leader, if you will have a good skill set or a speed of implementation on a specific topic or industry or marketplace that you're trying to break through. Why is that? Well, you have to look at the main triggers of action of people, right? Why do we make decisions in the first place? Well, it could either be from love, right? It could be from hate, from pride, from envy, from anxiety, from fear, and all of the above that you can think of, right? So these things are emotional triggers that makes you do specific things. So even though that we might have the same exact fundamental truths that we know, the way we apply them is going to be extremely different. Why is that? Because both of our lives are extremely unique to each of our own. So now, how do you actually make better decisions to implement to your business methodologies? Well, you have to find the nearest individual that has gone through the same exact path as you, so you can actually just simply replicate it, where your chances of success is higher. It doesn't matter if they're more successful than you, but if their pathway is not as similar, or if they haven't gone through a specific life experience as you, there's gonna be a higher chance of that specific advice or insight that they've given you is not gonna be as effective compared to your situation. So for example, for me, I grew up in an immigrant family. I grew up in a low income family, a low income household, and faith was a huge proponent of my entire belief system. And eventually I went to America and I was exposed with specific different beliefs. So what was the triggers that happened in between that made me go through these ventures, right? So now I have to look at other people that are successful entrepreneurs that had somewhat of a similar background, right? Or for example, I grew up with a specific, ailment, or I had asthma growing up, and that inspired me or triggered me to push harder and work harder, right? And prove people wrong. So those are like traumas that you built up in your childhood. Now with that information I have, then I can look at point of references of those type of individuals. So for example, one of my individual that I studied a lot when I was playing basketball was Kobe Bryant. Why is that? If you think about in his childhood, what did he do? He moved from country to country. He was always the new kid, right? And he was not talented, but he was extremely hardworking. Now, what was his thought process? What was his patterns? How did he actually attack or build relationships, right? So these are the things now that I would look into and adapt on my own life, right? Because a lot of people have difficulty on actually intaking wisdom for the fact that they have pride, ego, or their traumas that damage their brain. And I think that's one of the main hurdles that you have to ask yourself simply is, what are the traumas or pride or egos that is hindering me on growing and making better decisions? And a couple of questions you can ask yourself as well when you're making a decision, and ask yourself, is this a fundamental truth that I'm making a decision on, or am I making this based off of an objective truth that I embrace, right? So you can simply ask yourself, why am I angry? What is the reason I'm sad? All of these basic questions is actually a deeper understanding on opening up that window on your thought process and your consciousness, and going a deeper layer on your subconsciousness and seeing on how you actually make decisions. And this is a way for you to actually see your blind spots, right? Because you have patterns. You always have patterns that you build up. And if you ask yourself, when I pick an order, or if I go out and I always crave something, do I always go American, Japanese? Do I go Mexican? And then you can go another layer on that. When I go to American cuisine, what is my go-to orders? Why do I order these things? And then these specific ingredients, what does this make me feel this way, right? Now you just reverse engineer the same exact thought pattern that you just looked into to your thought process on business decisions. For example, why am I breaking through this industry? Who are my competitors in this industry, right? How can I actually exceed here? What is gonna be my potential roadblocks into this industry? Then now you have a good baseline on knowing if you have blind spots or you're acting in a good foundation. 90% of people, they just simply act or simply don't act just for the fact that they haven't asked these hard questions. And yes, they are extremely hard questions, but if you generally want to make better decisions within your business, your life, and anything, you have to be able to face these difficult questions and answer them. And instead of shutting down and leaving, or just avoiding the entire topic as a whole, or you make a joke about it, right? Then you're not gonna get anywhere, or you're not gonna be able to reach your best potential. And I'm learning this way myself as well. So for example, for me, one of the things that I always see is I always overthink. And I ask myself, why do I overthink, all right? And then as you guys can see already, like I read a lot of books. These are some of my things that I wondered, well, I didn't go to college, right? I grew up where I was always considered below average student. Now, how do I compensate? By reading books. And in my scenario, instead of seeing it as a trauma where like, oh, I'm never ever gonna touch a book, I used it as a fuel and an energy to actually pick up a book, even though it was very difficult for me to read books. And if you were to tell me 4 years ago if I'm going to be reading this book and any books that I have in my library now, I would tell you you're kidding me, right? The closest of reading I've done growing up was mangas and anime comics, essentially, right? That was it, with pictures and stories. That's it. But these concepts I would have never thought and these business ventures that I've gone into, I would have never thought I would be here. But that is something I wanted to share with you guys, and I know it's a lot to digest, but if you guys want to learn more about it, I'm going to share this to you guys in the link. It's called Phantoms in the Brain, right? And then also, I've broken down a couple of things in my phone, right? In terms of breaking down on like how can you actually discern your biased decisions and good decision making, right? And I hope this helped for you guys, and hope there's something valuable that you guys learned. And if you guys want to learn more about it, or if you guys want to learn more, or you guys are interested in the specific topics like this, where it's not specifically business, but you can apply it within business, then don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment section below. I'm curious on some of the things that you guys feel like has been withholding you as well, and what do you guys feel like will you do in terms of the exercise? Do you guys think this is helpful? Let me know as well in the comment section below. But as always, be a creator, not a consumer. Create something today that will inspire you and others. See ya.